Hello students, today we'll be doing the first chapter, A Letter to God, written by G.L. Fuentes from your book, First Flight. This chapter revolves around the idea of having unquestionable belief in something. The story is set in a Latin American country. Lencho, the farmer, who is the protagonist of the story, writes a letter to God seeking help from the Almighty after discovering his entire crop yield destroyed by a devastating hailstorm. Although his wishes get fulfilled partially, if not completely, he is ungrateful in the end and questions the honesty and modesty of the postmasters who actually helped him with money in the name of God. This was the introduction which I have just given you. Now I'll read out the chapter along with the difficult words which you need to write, underline and write down their meanings, which I'll be giving simultaneously. Now, the first paragraph is, the house, the only one in the entire valley, sat on the crest of a low hill. From this height one could see the river and the field of ripe corn dotted with the flowers that always promised a good harvest. The only thing the earth needed was a downpour, or at least a shower. Throughout the morning, Lencho, who knew his fields intimately, had done nothing else but see the sky towards the northeast. Now underline the word crest, which means top of a hill, dotted, full of, downpour, heavy rain, intimately, closely. Now in this paragraph, Lencho the farmer lived on the only house that was there on the top of a hill. Okay, and the hill was low heighted. From there a river and a ready to harvest corn field were visible. The field belonged to Lencho and he had the utmost confidence that the harvest would reap great profits. The only thing that he awaited was rainfall. In this hope, he spent an entire morning gazing at the sky in the northeast direction from where a drizzle was expected to shower on his field. Now next paragraph goes this way. Now we are really going to get some water, woman. The woman who was preparing supper replied, "Yes, God willing." The older boys were working in the field, while the smaller ones were playing near the house until the woman called to them all, "Come for dinner." It was during the meal that, just as Lencho had predicted, big drops of rain began to fall. In the northeast, huge mountains of clouds could be seen approaching. The air was fresh and sweet. The man went out for no other reason than to have the pleasure of feeling the rain on his body, and when he returned he exclaimed, "These aren't raindrops falling from the sky. They are new coins. The big drops are 10-cent pieces and the little ones are 5s. Now underline the word exclaimed, which means cry out suddenly in surprise, strong emotion or pain. Now in this paragraph, the man, while looking at the sky, confidently tells his wife that they are going to have a rain shower, to which the lady replies by saying, "Only if everything happens as they hope and expect their elder children." Expectation, okay? Their elder children were working at the field and the younger ones were playing near the house when Lencho's wife calls everyone for dinner. It is during that time drops of rain begin to fall, hereby proving the farmer's prediction to be true. The wind was pleasant and clouds could be seen approaching from the northeast sky. Lencho goes out of the house to take pleasure in feeling the droplets on his body. He refers to the drizzle as coins, large droplets being equivalent to 10 cents and the smaller ones 5 cents. He says so because these raindrops would ensure a good crop, which would eventually get them a lot of money. Now, next paragraph says, with a satisfied expression, he regarded the field of ripe corn with its flowers draped in a curtain of rain. But suddenly a strong wind began to blow, and along with the rain, very large hailstones began to fall. These truly did resemble new silver coins. The boys, exposing themselves to the rain, ran out to collect the frozen pearls. Now underline the word regarded, which means consider or think of in a specified way. Draped, adorn or cover or wrap, W-R-A-P, someone or something. Okay, hailstones, a pellet of hail, P-E-L-L-E-T. Resemble means have a similar appearance or to qualities in common with, means just look or seem like. Exposing means make something visible by uncovering it, yeah, revealing. So, on seeing everything go as expected, Lencho reflected upon the field and the flowers covered with droplets, which seemed as if they were wrapped in a curtain. Unexpectedly, strong wind started blowing, leading to a hailstorm. Satirically, the writer refers to these pellets of frozen rain as new silver coins. The innocent boys became playful and went out in the rain to play and collect these hailstones, which looked like frozen pearls. Next paragraph says, "It's really getting bad now," exclaimed the man. "I hope it passes quickly." It did not pass quickly. For an hour, the hail rained on the house, the garden, the hillside, the cornfield, on the whole valley. The field was white as if covered with salt. The farmer now starts worrying and hopes that the storm gets over quickly, which, to his utmost disappointment, did not. The hailstones covered the entire valley, including the house, garden, hillside, and the cornfield. It made everything look so white that it seemed as if it was covered in salt. Not a leaf remained on the trees. The corn was totally destroyed. The flowers were gone from the plants. Lencho's soul was filled with sadness. When the storm had passed, he stood in the middle of the field and said to his sons, "A plague of locusts would have left more than this. The hail has left nothing. This year we will have no corn." That night was a sorrowful one. All our work for nothing. There's no one who can help us. We'll all go hungry this year. Please underline the word plague, which means a destructively numerous inflow or multiplication of a harmful animal infestation. Locusts, it's an insects which fly in big groups and destroy crops. Now here in this paragraph, Lencho became stressed and disappointed as everything went against the plan. The trees had shed their leaves, corns were smashed, and the flowers had also fallen from their plants. While standing in the withered fields, he conveyed his dismay and sorrow to his sons by commenting that the effect of the storm proved to be worse than that of crop-destroying insects. All their hard work had gone in vain. He felt helpless as no corn had been left and feared that they might have to starve this time. But in the hearts of all who lived in that solitary house in the middle of the valley, there was a single hope: help from God. Don't be so upset, even though this seems like a total loss. Remember, no one dies of hunger. That's what they say, no one dies of hunger. Solitary means existing alone, yeah, lonely. So even after having everything had gone southwards, means gone wrong, the family still had hope in their hearts of hearts. They had faith in the Almighty God even after nothing was left. They gave each other support and recalled a saying which ensures that no one ever dies of starvation. All through the night, Lencho thought only of his one hope, the help of God, whose eyes, as he had been instructed, see everything, even what is deep in one's conscience. Lencho was an ox of a man, working like an animal in the fields, but still he knew how to write. The following Sunday, at daybreak, he began to write a letter, which he himself would carry to town and place in the mail. It was nothing less than a letter to God. Here the word conscience, please underline, an inner sense of right and wrong. Ox of a man means hard working. Daybreak, the time in the morning when daylight first appears. Now in this paragraph, Lencho spent his entire night thinking of the only option left, that was to seek the help of God, who he had been informed has its eyes and ears everywhere. He thought of writing a letter to God conveying his grievances. Despite spending all these years working at the farm, he still knew how to write. He started writing on the Sunday morning and thought of mailing it himself by going to the town. God, he wrote, if you don't help me, my family and I will go hungry this year. I need 100 pesos in order to sow my field again and to live until the crop comes. Because the hailstorm, he wrote to God on the envelope, put the letter inside, and still troubled went to town. At the post office, he placed a stamp on the letter and dropped it into the mailbox. Now pesos, the word pesos is the basic monetary unit of Mexico. As I've told you, this story is set in Latin America. So here it's several other Latin American countries and the Philippines country, they have this pesos as a currency. So in his letter to God, he communicated his poverty-stricken situation and mentioned that he needed 100 pesos to regenerate the crops along with surviving until they are ready to harvest. On the envelope he wrote, to God, then at the post office placed a stamp on the letter and dropped it in the mailbox. One of the employees, who was a postman and also helped at the post office, went to his boss, laughing heartily, showed him the letter to God. Never in his career as a postman had he known that address. The postmaster, a fat, amiable fellow, also broke out laughing, but almost immediately he turned serious and, tapping the letter on his desk, commented, "What faith! I wish I had the faith of the man who wrote this letter," starting up a correspondence with God. So underline the word amiable, means friendly and pleasant. Correspondence means communication by exchanging letters with someone. So a postman who was also an employee of the post office noticed Lencho's letter and showed it to the postmaster. They both felt amused, but the postmaster, who was fat and friendly, immediately developed a sense of seriousness. He was astounded at the amount of faith Lencho has in God and wished he had the same. So in order not to shake the writer's faith in God, now this paragraph is really very important, mark it, students. So in order not to shake the writer's faith in God, the postmaster came up with an idea, answer the letter. But when he opened it, it was evident that to answer it, he needed something more than goodwill, ink and paper. But he stuck to his resolution. He asked for money from his employees. He himself gave part of his salary, and several friends of his were obliged to give something for an act of charity. Please underline the word goodwill, which means friendly, helpful, or cooperative feelings or attitude. Resolution, a firm decision to do or not to do something. Obliged, grateful. So with good intentions, the postmaster read the letter and thought of replying to it so as to keep the writer's belief intact. But the writer expected the reply in a different way that could not be fulfilled with pen, paper and morals. The farmer had demanded for 100 pesos. The postmaster, along with his colleagues and a few friends who were more than willing to donate for a good cause, collected a pool of money to help Lencho. So next says, it was impossible for him to gather together the 100 pesos, so he was able to send the farmer only little more than half. He put the money in an envelope addressed to Lencho, and with it a letter containing only a single word as a signature, God. Despite his best efforts, he was only able to collect an amount not more than half of what was required. He then addressed it to Lencho along with a letter which was undersigned by God. Now next paragraph says, the following Sunday, Lencho came a bit earlier than usual to ask if there was a letter for him. It was the postman himself who handed the letter to him, while the postmaster, experiencing the contentment of a man who has performed a good deed, looked on from his office. Lencho showed not the slightest surprise on seeing the money. Such was his confidence, but he became angry when he counted the money. God could not have made a mistake, nor could he have denied Lencho what he had requested. So underline the word contentment, which means satisfaction. So next Sunday what happens? Lencho came looking for a reply a bit earlier than expected, and the postmaster handed him the letter, waiting to see him, joyful and surprised, while the postmaster, feeling satisfied, oversaw it from his office. On the contrary, the farmer got disheartened on seeing that the money was less than what he asked for. His faith is still undeterred, and he believed that God cannot make such a mistake. So what happened? Immediately, the paragraph says, immediately Lencho went up to the window to ask for paper and ink. On the public writing table, he started to write with much wrinkling of his brow caused by the effort he had to make to express his ideas. When he finished, he went to the window to buy a stamp, which he licked and then affixed to the envelope with a blow of his fist. Yeah. The moment the letter fell into the mailbox, the postmaster went to open it. It said, "God, of the money that I asked for, only 70 pesos reached me. Send me the rest, since I need it very much. But don't send it to me through the mail, because the post office employees are a bunch of crooks." Lencho. So on being disappointed, he started looking for ink and paper to write a God again. While writing, his eyebrows got curled out of the concentration with which he was drafting a new request. So he was actually very angry over here. And on completing, he affixed it with the stamp. As soon as he dropped it into the mailbox, the postmaster took it out to read it. Lencho complained that he had only received 70 pesos and he is really in need of the remaining amount. And he doubted the integrity and honesty of the post office employees and suggested that the money should not be sent via post, because he doubted that the staff at the post office must have stolen the missing amount. So this was the story. This was the innocence that speaks about Lencho, and also it says like faith is like Wi-Fi. It is invisible, but it has the power to connect you to what you need. So with this theme, I end the story. I hope you all have understood. Please go along as I have read, understand the paragraph along with the explanation which I have given and the word meanings. I'll be attaching the question answers along with it. Copy that down, which will be helpful to you.